It's KFI AM 640, and you're listening to The Conway Show on demand on the iHeartRadio app.
It's the Tim Conway Jr. Show. Mo Kelly in for Mark Thompson, who is in for Tim Conway Jr. I know it's so very confusing, but here we are for the next hour. I'm going to sit with you for a second. And if you've been listening to Mark Thompson, who was in for Tim Conway Jr., you know that the biggest story of the day is the sit-down interview between presidential candidate Kamala Harris and vice presidential candidate Tim Walz with Dana Bash of CNN. You heard some of the clips earlier today, which were given out to the press in anticipation of the actual conversation, which is airing now live on CNN. And Stephan, do you have some of that for us?
You are well aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's a crisis of affordability. Yeah. One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who do want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. People, I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it. Which is why my agenda includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging. What we need to do to extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years. What we need to do to bring down the cost of housing. My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream and their aspiration, but do it in a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years. Yeah. The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited, I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that anymore.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America. What we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
in 2019, I believe, in a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to guard against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. And to do that, we can do what we have accomplished thus far. The Inflation Reduction Act, what we have done to invest, by my calculation, over probably $1 trillion over the next 10 years, investing in a clean energy economy. What we've already done, creating over 300,000 new clean energy jobs. That tells me, from my experience as vice president, we can do it without banning fracking. In fact, Dana, I cast the tie-breaking vote that actually increased leases for fracking as vice president. So I'm very clear about where I stand.
And was
if
there
you're
some
listening to
policy
KFI right now, we're listening to some of the interview between presidential candidate Kamala Harris and vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, along with Dana Bash of CNN. We're not going to play the whole interview, but it's the talker of the day. Very quickly, this was done because of pressure to have a sit-down interview. I thought it was odd because that's not a thing in presidential politics. And yes, it's weird, my word, that this is a truncated presidential campaign schedule because Kamala Harris obviously didn't have a full primary season, did not have a lot of time leading up to this moment, big picture. And it's not all that unusual for you to see a presidential candidate and a vice presidential candidate in the same interview. I just thought people remembered as I did. I remember when Trump and Pence sat down together in the same interview. I remember when Barack Obama and Joe Biden sat down in the same interview. I remember when Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan sat down in the middle of the interview. I mean, in the same interview. I mean, there's still YouTube out there. I think the only difference is that this is Harris's first interview. And so people would expect her to handle this by herself. But it's not unusual for a presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate to sit down in the same interview. It's obviously going on CNN right now. We're not going to play or listen to the whole interview, but we wanted to give you just a little taste of what it is. And I can see right now, tomorrow is going to be, number one, learn the name of the person interviewing you. That's never good form. Dana Bash. And also, Vice President Harris is going to have to answer some of these policy changes. I know in a political sense, you want to, during the primary season, you want to go to the left or to the right, and then you campaign towards the middle for the general. But she still has some concrete stances of years before that they are very different now, and she's going to have to consistently and continually answer for why they've changed now, whether those changes were for political reasons or whether they were for economic reasons or sincere reasons. And that will be her story that she has to tell.
You're listening to Tim Conway Jr. On Demand from KFI AM 640.
Mo Kelly in for Tim just a little bit early. Yeah, I'm in for Mark Thompson, who is in for Tim, musical chairs. But if you ever listen to Later with Mo Kelly, I often talk about the issues and ills of Metro. When I came into work today, I planned to talk about something else, but I ran into KFI's own Michael Monks, and he was telling me, and I'm just paraphrasing, he'll tell you himself in just a moment, he was telling me that Metro, paraphrasing, was giving him an earful or an email full about how, I guess, they've taken exception to my ongoing rants and editorials regarding Metro. Michael Monks, thank you for staying around just a little later this evening and joining me in studio. What's going on?
It's my pleasure to stay. I'm union. I get overtime for this.
Does Chris Little know that?
Absolutely. I'm happy to stay because you got me in trouble.
Okay,
man.
tell me in your words what happened.
Well, you do occasionally say a few things about the Metro system. You express an opinion about them. I cover Metro, and I'm a writer, but I cover the Metro board meetings and a lot of the situations, the tragedies, the unpleasantness of writing sometimes. And so I know the team at Metro pretty well at this point when it comes to communicating. And I guess they heard some things from you recently, and it was just one gripe too far. And they were like, we need to find a way to get some truth to Mo Kelly.
Oh, they say that I have been inaccurate in my reporting. Well, it's weird because they know how to reach me. I have corresponded with at least one member of the communications staff. They know how to email me. They've never contacted me and said, hey, we have a representative who could come on and disabuse you of all these notions you have.
Well, this is what I told them. And I have a good relationship with them. They're good people who work in the Metro Communication Department. They know their stuff. They'll connect you to who you need to talk to. They set you up real nice. They gave me a bottle of water on a hot day when Secretary Buttigieg was here. It was nice. But for this one, I did say, look, Mo Kelly's not going to tell you not to come on the show. If you want to come on and talk about Metro, that'd be great late night engagement, to talk about it. He'll have you on. They didn't. This particular representative did not have much interest in doing that.
Wait. They don't have interest in having a spokesperson come on the air with me, but they want a back door and go to you. And you're not the public information officer. You're not my boss. You're an anchor, a news reporter, not even in the editorial side of KFI, but you're supposed to run and give me a message?
I think that's what they were asking, and I'm happy to do that, but you and I do different things here within the organization, and sometimes that's difficult to explain to folks who are like, oh man, John Cobalt, he's so unfair to me, and then that might hurt my ability, right, to get an interview with so-and-so. And it's like, well, John Cobalt, Tim Conway, Mo Kelly, Bill Handel, they all get the opportunity to speak their minds freely. That's how the audience gets engaged. We in the field of the news reporters, we're out there getting the facts and shooting it straight, right? You're not going to hear our commentary about it. Maybe commentary adjacent when we get to have these types of conversations on the shows. But, that's why we got to have, it's difficult for folks out there to distinguish between host and news reporter.
Okay, news and opinion.
Exactly.
All right. So what is it? Let me say it in an opinion type way. So what's stuck in the behind of Metro?
Well, I think the one that got them the most upset is on a recent show. This has been about 2 or 3 weeks at this point.
I do it every night.
I know. I hear you talking about it a late night. It was the extension of the K line, which is a big project, and it's not fully realized, what this might look like. And this is that northern extension that's going to connect like 4 of the rail lines. And
is that the one that's not going to be done until like 2041?
There's various projects that have very lengthy timelines. And so we're writing and getting excited about them now because they're announced, and it is cool to think about. But man, these projects take a long time. And man, is it worth it? I don't know.
If I understand you correctly, they contacted you.
I got a call.
A call?
They called me.
To correct me about an extension project and skipped over the 35 freaking times I talked about violence on the Metro or homelessness on the Metro. Do I have that accurate?
I think you do. I think what's happened is, obviously, there have been some difficulties on Metro, to say the least, not to mention...
You're very nice. That's a very generous read.
Yes. There have been tragedies on there. There's been violence on the system and
murders.
Exactly. And so it's a system that is dealing with what might amount to a public relations crisis, right? Because they've had a lot of bad stuff to deal with alongside what can objectively be called good news when it comes to, hey, we got some federal funds for this project, or we're announcing a new extension of this line. I mean, they've got tracks going down all over the county. This might be a real rail region someday, but they're dealing with all of this on top of it. And so I think they're skittish and sensitive. That's just my interpretation.
Well, clearly they're sensitive because they're coming to you to pass a message to me. It's almost like you're sitting in class and you see, oh, that girl's very cute. I don't want to talk to her myself. So let me, Michael, I need you to go pass the message and let her know that I want to ask her out. And we're all adults here.
Yes.
If there is something positive to report, or you want something or a story better covered, then come on the show. We can have that adult conversation. But at the same time, I'm not going to ignore the fact that people are dying, people are getting stabbed, people are getting shot. There are fights. Bus operators are getting assaulted multiple times. And I'm not making that up. That's the actual truth. And if they want to come on here and say, hey, Mo, we want to talk about the extension of the K line, I'm saying, like, you're more worried about windshield wipers on a car that doesn't even run.
I think that's a fair assessment from an editorial perspective. And frankly, if you ever need some help with me talking to a woman on your behalf, I'm proud to be your Cyrano. Send me out there. I'll do it.
Cyrano, nice pull. We call that a deep cut. Do you have a moment to hang around for one more segment? Because I want to get into just the more broad perception of Metro and what they are trying to do. I'm going to try to use you as a conduit, if you will.
It's my pleasure. As I said at the beginning, the overtime clock is ticking. I'm happy to stay as long as you need.
I know Chris Little just loves that.
You're listening to Tim Conway Jr. On Demand from KFI AM 640.
It was a time in which you get on the bus and wouldn't think twice about it. But now, Michael Monks, as you continue to join me in studio as we discuss Metro more broadly, it's Metro the trains, Metro the buses, Metro the platforms. How should let me ask the question a different way. As a former rider of Metro bus and trains, I don't feel comfortable riding either today. How do we best communicate to the Metro powers that be, since they are listening right now, to take take our concerns more into account? Because if they're complaining through you about, hey, you didn't talk about the extension to the K line accurately, we're missing each other like ships in the night. I'm talking about murder, death, kill, and they're talking about extensions.
Well, you're a former writer. I'm a current writer, and I live downtown, so it's like centralized. I can go out to any corner of the county just about on one of these things, and I do. But you're right. The thing about Metro that I don't think the broader government has had a conversation about is the general unpleasantness that exist within the system. It's not about the murder. Those are tragic, but they are rare. But when they happen, they're big news stories, and they do need to be answered. We need to know about precautions that are being taken, especially when we have already learned that 98% of the crimes committed on the system are committed by homeless folks. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say homeless. People who didn't pay their fare. That's the accurate way to say it. So they know that people who are skipping fare are the ones committing the crimes. But when you're on a train and it reeks, or someone's smoking, or someone's got a speaker playing, or someone's naked, or someone's having a mental breakdown in front of you.
And, not necessarily or.
Exactly. And this can all happen on a train car. There is a discomfort there. And so where are the alarms for that? Where are the sirens and the lights flashing for that? Because LA has always been a city, shouldn't say always, in the early part of the 20th century, this was quite a public transportation community. But this is a car city now, and people anywhere in the world, what do you think about LA? Maybe movies, blah, 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 beaches, traffic. Traffic is top of mind for people who are not from here. That's how big cars are here. But this is a city that's made significant investments in public transit. And to have it be impacted negatively by some of these sights and sounds and scents upon the system, it makes the investment questionable, because you're a former rider. You should be a current rider. The Burbank bus will drop you off right in front of here.
I know. If I had more time, look, I want to be able to ride and not worry. I remember the times in which I was riding with one eye open because I couldn't put I didn't dare go to sleep. And that was back then. That was a few years ago before the pandemic. And now I cannot in good conscience say it's okay for my wife to ride. I can't in good conscience say it's okay for any of my family members to ride. And if you're telling me that there is this disconnect between what Metro is hearing me say and what they are concerned with me saying, then I don't know how we get back to where we were, because I think it's disingenuous to suggest that this is about messaging. This is about real issues. Yes, the violence is not the predominant issue, but it's, I would say, the most important issue.
Absolutely. You don't want to get stabbed to death on the Metro, that should be a bare minimum request. We know that. That's why when it happens, we explore that tragedy at the level it deserves, which is extraordinary seriousness and constant questions to the government about how to respond to that. But there are daily constant occurrences on the system that are also worthy of concern and worthy of the fear or discomfort that people feel about it. You know, I went to the Guatemalan Festival in Westlake last weekend, and my spouse and I took the train to get there, and I saw the most disgusting thing I've ever seen on a Metro line. I'll share it with you.
Oh, just wait. Whatever you saw, it'll be worse 2 weeks from now. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. There was a man on there who wasn't wearing a shirt. He looked like, you know, somebody that might have been having some mental issues. But listen to this, Mo. He was eating on the train, which is technically a rule violation, by
Correct.
the way. He was eating what appeared to be cherries. And Mo, he was eating these cherries directly from the seat next to him. No basket. No plate. The cherries were touching the seat in the Metro, and he was eating from it.
Are they real cherries? Were they actual cherries? Just want to make sure.
Eating them. But I just think about, you know.
And someone did sit in that seat, I assume, shortly thereafter.
He should be so lucky if that's all that happened in that seat. You know, I mean, it was... I'm still thinking about it. I'll just leave it at that. I mean,
let's put a bow on this. We know that Metro listens to KFI. We know that Metro knows how to contact not only you, but knows how to contact me. We know that they can craft a message and it will be read on this station some way. If they have good news to report, we'll read it. It may be with a tinge of condescension from me and disbelief, but I'll read it because part of it, I believe, is shaming the powerful and making those who are comfortable uncomfortable. Unless something changes, I'm not going to change my tune because the status quo cannot be accepted. So what needs to happen, Metro, since I know you're listening right now? Stop harassing my friend Michael Monks. Harass Michael Crozier, okay? He deserves it. He deserves it. Just making sure you're listening.
Yeah, they absolutely should come on because there is a good story to tell about the investment in public transportation in LA, and we are out there telling that as well. And I enjoy working with their comms people on those types of stories. I'm a fan of rail, a fan of public transportation. It's exciting to be able to live in a city that has it, but I think elevating the expectations of what this community gets in return for this significant investment, it's a lot of money. And that should be treated with respect.
Well, let me put it this way. I don't want to hear anyone complaining about a monologue if you're not willing to step up and participate in the dialogue. There's an open invitation for Metro if you want to come on this show later with Mo Kelly from 7 to 10, Monday through Friday. Either you come on and you tell us where I'm getting it wrong or something that Metro is doing that needs to have more publicity, or I will continue on as I have been. Michael Monks, I say travel safely. Thank you for what you do, and hopefully they'll leave you alone now. Don't give my email. Don't give my email.
No, I hope they don't leave me alone. We got a lot of stories to tell, but I appreciate you giving me the chance to come on and talk about it.
You're listening to Tim Conway Jr. On Demand from KFI AM 640.
It's the Tim Conway Jr. Show. Mo Kelly in for Mark Thompson, who is in for Tim Conway Jr. Just finishing things up for them, and then I'll officially take over at 7 o'clock. Hope you've had a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed that conversation I just had with Michael Monks and this ongoing discussion we've had with Metro. And I take everything I say very seriously. I don't take myself seriously. I take what I do seriously, and I think that there's room to make sure that we hold the powerful accountable. And KFI has been doing a tremendous job at doing just that for decades now. Something else just want to let you know before we close out this hour. If you've been listening to Later with Mo Kelly, you know that we've been following the story of how the state of California had been considering a bill which would limit the use of phones, cell phones, smartphones at schools during the day. Well, the state legislature has now officially passed this bill, and it requires all public schools to come up with a plan to limit or ban phones during the school day. I don't know if you can do that if you're going to leave it to the schools, but me personally, I am all for that. It's an impediment to learning. It's disruptive. If you've ever been in an academic environment, been to a school, be it a middle school or a high school, elementary school, just about every kid has a phone. And I get it. I get it. If you're a parent, especially in today's world, given all the craziness out there, you want to make sure that you can get in touch with your child at a moment's notice. I get all of that. But at the same time, the phones are getting in the way of the learning experience. It's gotten to the point where it makes it almost impossible for teachers to handle their business of educating not only your child, but everyone else's child. The Phone Free Schools Act, which was introduced by Assemblyman Josh Hoover, now gives the state public schools until July of 2026. I guess they're in no rush. Hell, half these kids will be graduates by then. Well, if they make it that far. Until July 2026 to come up with a plan to implement a ban or other limits on smartphones. For example, schools could require students to put phones in a locker or a sealed pouch during school hours. I've heard that. And I said they'll just give a dummy phone. They'll just give away an old phone. They won't actually put their real phone. I just know because I've done it getting into movie screenings where they want to take your phone so you can't take a picture of the screen or record anything. Yes, I've taken a secondary phone, and I don't think of myself as super smart. And kids are always looking for a way to get around the rules. Remember that first time we told you about how schools would have laptops and they'd have access to the internet, and supposedly they were locked where they could only see certain material. They could only surf to certain sites. And then like a week later, they had they jailbroke all of them so they could go to porn sites, sports sites, fantasy sites. Did not matter. They were abusing the computers. They were using them for anything and everything. It didn't take long. So I say that to say kids will find a way around this. We have to be realistic because they're going to get their phones. They're going to be using phones. And still, there is that emergency component. Schools would not be able to stop students from using their phones in certain circumstances, such as a medical necessity or emergency. The question then becomes, for those students who actually comply, what would be the steps you'd have to take? Let's say you're in your classroom and you have a need, an emergency, but you got to get your phone, which is maybe in the administration building. I don't know. I don't know about all the details, but those are the details. They have about 2 years to work out. Now, Twala Sharp, producer of Later with Mo Kelly, he is also an administrator at a special needs school. And I mention that because when you talk about emergencies with students, I'm guessing that's a daily occurrence.
Yes, it's a daily occurrence. I mean, look, even today for me, it was an early day for my daughter's school. She got out before I got off work, and so she was going to go walk home with my son, who was going to come get her. I needed to be able to get in touch with her so I could coordinate things for her. And so if she had to go through all these hoops and hurdles to get her phone, I would be beyond upset. And so I get why you have to roll this plan out to 2026, because it is going to take some time to come up with a truly comprehensive way to confiscate phones and also be able to give them back at a moment's notice in case of an emergency. Or even if you have those parents who are like, I will sign a waiver, my child can have their phone all day, whatever it may be, this is something that is going to take time. First step, enact the legislation, sign the bill, whatever, get it passed so you can get these phones taken away, because they are a nuisance. They are how these kids are coming up with these 7-Eleven smash and grab plans. They're just texting, tweeting, doing it on social media and coming together. And this is how they're doing ditch parties now without passing a note that can get caught. This is how they're doing all types of ungodly things because they have these phones during the day. But I do know that there are times where I need to get in touch with my child at school. I'm like, hey, why aren't you getting back with me? And they will say something like, well, teacher took my phone. And I will be down at that school like, I sent my daughter to school with the phone for a reason. And admittedly, I've gone off on administration at a school for taking the phone away. So I'm of two different mindsets.
Yeah, there's administrator mind and there's parent mind.
Yes.
And if California were to see this all the way through, in other words, it's passed by the state legislature, it has yet to be signed by the governor. Hating to go all civics on people. But if it's signed by Newsom, we would become the 5th state in the country to take such steps. So other states have done it and on some level have figured it out. It's not impossible, but there's not going to be one solution which is going to please everyone. It's going to inconvenience some, but we also have to take into account that the primary responsibility and purpose of our schools is to educate our children, not babysit, but educate them. And also make sure that our kids are not getting in the way of someone else's education. It's the Tim Conway Jr. Show. When we come back at the top of the hour, we'll tell you about some of the things that you can and can't do, what's going to be open and closed as part of this Labor Day weekend. So I'm signing off for the Tim Conway Jr. Show. And when we come back, it'll be later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Conway Show on demand on the iHeartRadio app. Now, you can always hear us live on KFI AM 640, 4 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and anytime on demand on the iHeartRadio app.